I'm Averie.
And I'm Mel.
This is the Veda Lounge Podcast.
All things Vedic, cosmic, and magic.
For yoga teachers, entrepreneurs, creatives, and coming back to your own center.
We explore themes on living like you practice to knowing your nature.
Join the conversation for an embodied homecoming to illuminate your radiance.
Through getting nerdy with Vedic sciences and self-discovery, cozy into your cosmic cadence.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Averie.
And Mel here.
We're super excited today on the podcast. We have Jill with us. And this is such a special one. So Jill is a meditation teacher, a psychic medium, past life regression therapist, Reiki master, and a shamanic practitioner. She lives in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and her whole practice is really focused on bringing forward healing on a soul level through the awareness of blocks and trauma we hold on to through the course of our life. Jill has two of her own podcasts, one being Breaking Beyond Meditation, and I will share that is personally how I came to find Jill years and years ago when I was beginning my own journey with meditation. So it's extremely special to have her sitting across from me because personally, right, her meditations, I'm like teary-eyed because she like it's been so profound, and her meditations have led me to so much healing and so much self-awareness and insight. So yeah, there's so much more to her when we talk about, being multifaceted. So we're just super excited to dive in with all things, right? Meditation and shamanic journey, which is so cool, you guys, and so beautiful and profound. So welcome, Jill. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was an amazing intro. Thank you. I didn't realize you had been listening that long. So you might be some of the, part of that group that's like, when are you coming out with new meditations?
I definitely am. I will share. I am, but you have so many, and so like I've gotten to journey back through some of the ones that are from the very beginning, and it's so special. So, but yeah, I'm definitely like I check back every few weeks. I'm like, where's Jill? Where's Jill's meditations?
I know. Well, like everything, we're constantly growing and shifting, and so I'm learning new tools and working on integrating those into my my shamanic journey practice and what I bring, forward for others that are in a more public space. So that's in progress, and hopefully very soon I'll be able to release those. I'm working on it.
Yay. Well, maybe if you could just share, I know I kind of introduced, but share a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into the work. I know that that's oftentimes such a big, broad question because people are like, where do I go with that? But anything that you feel called to maybe share on how you got here and what has led you to the journey, and then kind of maybe through a little bit of the journey, right? As we talk about all of the different things that you do integrate into your practice.
Oh, yeah, sure. I would love to. So, I get asked most commonly, was I born this way? And, as a clairvoyant primarily. So clairvoyant is someone who has clear sight, which means we can see kind of the unseen world, right? And I've always been like this since I was little. And things transitioned, right? So the abilities kind of shifted and changed, and I was more of observing something from the outside and not really understanding what it meant. I grew up in a very, a very Christian, dominated home. So I had to repress a lot of the things that I was experiencing because it was seen as something bad, or evil, And so when I got to my 20s, things started accelerating pretty significantly. I'm 47 right now. They started accelerating pretty significantly, and I was starting to see souls, people, and they would mostly be around others, and I would just kind of observe. And I was like, no, I'm not dipping my toe in that water. And what I found for myself, along with so many others, is that we have a catalyst in our life that shifts us. And I could, in retrospect, I can see those shifts, but I wasn't taking the bait. It was like, and for me and for a lot of, I think, psychic mediums, which is really where I started my work, was through death. So a lot of people will go into their mediumship work when someone dies or passes away. And I could see, looking back, I can see those deaths getting closer and closer to my, to my sphere. So we all have these spheres, like our parents or our siblings, our significant others, our children. These are in our like really close sphere. Outside of that, we might have grandparents and extended family members and so on. So when I say like I could feel that death coming closer, that's really what I'm talking about. So when I turned 33, which is such a big year for so many people, like even that number has such a really strong resonance, right? So when I turned 33 is when my father passed, and it completely sent me sideways in a really bad way, just like anger and frustration, and just closed off. Like if we think about tarot, like I was the hermit, except I walled up everyone around me and became quite angry. So that space of like kind of hermiting and really doing that deep dive took me to a place where I was accepting of more alternative methods to heal. And I think most people kind of get to that space. They go in and they'll explore other things when nothing normal, in quotes, normal works for them anymore. And that can be, name the pain, whether it's grief or physical ailments or, I hurt myself running. It's, or I have nightmares all the time. It's a spectrum. So I met a shamanic healer, and in that session, she was working on me, and I remember the feeling energetically while that was going through my body, which is the first experience I'd had like that. Because I am even now, I'm pretty much like, I don't really like anyone touching me. My sphere of energy is like, okay, that's as far as I want you to go. Because remember, I was born this way, so I've always been kind of sensitive. I just didn't understand why I didn't like certain public places and those kinds of things. So, this woman starts working on me, and I can feel the energy like surging through my body. And she, at the end of the session, she was like, I was, sorry, really distracted during your session, which I'm like, I couldn't, well, I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference if you were not. And she said, I just had this man next to me this whole time, and he's like talking and talking and talking and talking to me. And I'm like, sure, lady. Okay. Huge skeptic. And even though like I'm in that world, I'm just like, right. And she said, yeah, it's this man. And she tells me all these things he's showing her. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know what any of that means. But I'm trying to be open because I really need to heal. Just take this grief off me. Like, help me connect with my father. And she says, yeah, the guy said he kept telling me what his name was. He said his name was Dennis, which is my father's name. And I went absolutely like bawling, crying, like, what? How would you even know that? And she's like, you're here to heal. So like, this is what's coming through. And after that, it was like, he was my catalyst to shift, and the floodgate was just open. So I was seeing and feeling everything at such an accelerated rate. I didn't know what to do with it. I felt like I was crazy, but that's really how I came into the work and started connecting to people who had passed.
It's so true that loss and death, I mean, I think part of it too, it gets you thinking about this stuff, or how do I connect with my loved one in spirit? And it's so interesting because one of my dearest friends is a medium, and that's how it was after her father's passing that she ended up, these things started happening. And I think for a lot of people that don't understand this stuff, it's like, oh, are you just using your imagination? Are you trying to get to these places? But part of our natural mechanisms is to interpret energy and around us, but we don't live in a culture that has a template that's socialized for people to really be in relationship with that, when the reality is all of us and different people have these different access points, so to speak, but grief is one of those bridges that can bring us there. So that's so
Oh, for
beautiful.
sure.
Thank you.
I love that you put it. We don't have a template to access to understand like how we move through and access this information. I remember when I went through it, my father passed away in 2009, and when it happened and all of these things started coming to me, I didn't know how to work with it. There was no one around me. I mean, social media really was like fledgling. There was, thinking back, like technology has moved so quickly. We didn't have a really good way of connecting with other people that were like us or going through the similar things. We had YouTube, but it was like, how do you weed through all that content? So I one thing that I'm just so grateful for is the sense of community that's come out with the ability to connect like this, like we are today, with people that have gone through similar situations and really understand and can learn from each other and move through that progression much more quickly.
Yeah. And you're not going crazy. It's like
Yeah,
that.
And
right.
not insane.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that is a sign. And for me, when I was in high school, my best friend had passed away in a car accident with another good friend of mine, and there was all these weird signs. But it's kind of like, there's part of it's like, yes, that they're connecting with you. How sweet. And then this other part of it, it's like, well, it's a synchro or it's a coincidence, but I'm really curious for our listeners, like with the shamanic journeys and meditations, because for me, meditation has actually been a really profound bridge to connect with my loved ones in spirit and my best friend, not just that, but also literally my mental health and so much. But I'm not too familiar with shamanic journeys, and I'm so curious about what that is, and yeah, for you to share more on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, when I was going through the phase of like assimilating and trying to figure out how I can hear the dead, what does that look like? Um, I I would meditate because it was so loud to me. I would just sit in silence and I would just meditate. And it actually took it's so interesting the way spirit works. And I'm giving you this kind of background into how I got to this space because it's not like I was actively ever seeking something out. Like I wasn't actively seeking out to be a shamanic practitioner and really engage with our human indigenous ways, to connect with spirit in such a beautiful way. But that's really what happened. And again, for my own personal healing, because I really think in order to hold space for others, you have to like clean up your own stuff. You have to be able to look at it and see it. And that's really what shamanic journey does. And what shamanism does is really bring you back to that soul level, right? So, um, I started uh, I started openly sharing shamanic journey and guiding people in that way in late 2015 after an app called Periscope came out, and I got a really strong push from my spiritual team to and it was very clear, like you're going to sit in front of the camera, you're going to press go, and you're just going to start guiding people. And I was like, the hell if I am. Absolutely not going to happen. And I'll tell to any client, like your guides are not going to specifically tell you what you should be doing. You always have free will. When you really need to do something, they're going to strongly encourage it and push. I mean, I think we've all kind of experienced that in some way, shape, or form. And so that was it. And I said, I got so sick of them in my ear, like constantly, when are you gonna do the thing? When are you gonna put the camera up? I think you need to sit down. How about we do 5:30 a.m. every day? I mean, it was like a constant stream, like I just couldn't shut the voices off. So I did. I sat down in front of the camera and I started and I hit go live. Periscope took me on a crazy adventure. And what I learned through that is that I and I'll kind of back up again. When I did that, I don't have a script to sit down. I don't, all of this is channeled. So and I've gotten asked, like, where's it channeled from? It's channeled from higher self, and it's channeled from, um, I would call them probably more like an angelic being, someone or a being that looks over humanity. And in various cultures, you're going to see them called different things, but I would say probably more Western culture, you'd hear them call an angel. So I have this angelic being that comes in and he helps give me images because I'm a clairvoyant, and then I speak those images and off we go. And that's how I transitioned into a more open space with shamanic journey, because all of those meditations are based in my belief in core shamanism, and the journeys themselves take you to these different realms, I'm going to call them, where we can explore and see shadow parts of ourselves that we tuck away, and do it in a very loving and compassionate way to bring those messages forward. It helps us reconnect with memories, helps us reconnect with our loved ones that we lost, that we cherish so much. But yeah, so that's really transformed, and then I moved it into more of an audio format because I got a lot of requests for that, and it's taken off from there. But as I continue to grow and expand, as I kind of shared earlier, I have to find a way to kind of integrate that for myself, and then how am I going to produce that for others so they can connect, and it's really more of exploring indigenous cultures. Right now I'm working in Scandinavian cultures, and what does that mean to connect to Norse gods, deities, and the energy they bring in, and study of runes and all of that. And so how do I get people to be able to connect to that, especially in North America, where a lot of our Germanic, Scandinavian ancestors were. So it's kind of in our DNA. I know it's a long answer, but
I love it. And honestly, this is just, we're having an experience right now where I think this is a great example. Like, I can't make this up. Right before I jumped on, am really connected and love Freya. And there was a lot coming up this morning around that. And I was just like deep into working with, it's for some stuff I'm doing with t-shirts coming soon, premature for me to talk about, but I was just doing Freya, all this Freya stuff. And even the fact, so like, I just wanted to point this out. Like, this is how synchronicities work, and resonance is like it kind of validates, or when we talk about spirit pushing us, right? Or the guides, like where we're feeling called, but we're pushing back. But then there's these weird, how did you know? Or why did that show up again? And learning to collaborate with this stuff, because that's what makes life so magical. So I had to say, when you said that, I was like,
oh,
wild.
yeah. I mean, it's been a really wild transition, and the end of 2023, I have been waiting to work with this teacher who comes over. She's originally from Denmark. She goes in between London and Sweden, and she came over to the United States to teach. And I waited for a class for a couple of years because of COVID and then delays. And so I'm finally in this class. I have no idea what to expect, but I know, like, I have this really deep calling to this ancestral this ancestral healing. And I know nothing about runes. I don't know anything really about the Norse gods. I'm so, like, when I say green as fresh grass in spring, I had no idea. And I also didn't know what I was in for. I'm speaking kind of openly about this for the first time, but I had a very strong deity come in and be like, finally, you're here. We're going. And it was like the journey that our teacher told us to go on was like really benign. It was like, go connect with the land, go do, because it's like the first one of class. And here I am taking by Thor comes in, grabs me by the hand, takes me up to I don't know where, and it's like, now it begins finally. So, and I share that because there's a very interesting way that Norse gods, deities, Scandinavian, this culture where those deities will have sort of a claiming on you. They'll claim you. And I'm speaking about that because it after it happened to me, I thought, this is a crazy. I'm going through the like I'm learning something all new again, and I'm in the crazy phase. But when I was talking to other teachers in this space, and they would just say it through lecture, like, if this happens, they very much claim you and bring you through this kind of like journey of learning and expansion. And I'm trained in Peruvian medicine and core shamanism. So, Michael Harner's core shamanism, Sandra Ingerman, like we know all these shamanic practitioners. They're really famous in this like core shamanism world. And when that claiming happened, it's the message that came with that is like, you're done with that. Now you're here. Now you dedicate to this Norse cosmology, and you're going to learn and adapt to this. And that acceptance of that has been over the course of a good year, which is why I haven't produced any new meditations, because they're like, it has to be done in the scope of Norse cosmology. And because I'm so green, like I don't have all of that background in Norse cosmology. So, I mean, I have a much more greater sense of it now. I've been
Right.
studying runes exclusively with a teacher in England. And then, of course, I still have this teacher in Sweden. Um, so it's like and it's a quick, like, I have to get up to speed really quickly.
That makes me feel like a little more settled in my soul that like you're still around, right?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like this sense of, that will maybe be what you're driven toward is delivering these really beautiful experiences with this new set, right, of cosmology and belief and understanding that you've kind of just like, and where is the acceptance piece in that? Because that's got to be really hard to say, especially when you have, I mean, y'all, when I share that it's beautiful meditation practice, it's because it is, right? So when you have such like a foundation in something, like where is that piece of like acceptance of like, okay, I have to trust and I have to shift in what's calling? Because I think that can be a really hard point for a lot of people to say, okay, I surrender. And now I follow what spirit says.
Yeah. I would say, I've been practicing for 15 years. I have built a very strong bond with my spiritual team, and I do listen to them and I do trust. But I think it's a really good question what you ask, because it took me a solid, I want to say between 6 and 8 months, even though I said, fine, I will learn and but I need a teacher that is dun, 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 dun. I gave them the list, and here comes the teacher. I was like, okay, fine. I'll accept this journey and I'll learn with this teacher. But this is what I need. And boop, 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 all the things I need. So I'm like, fine, I'll listen. And there was one really big thing that happened. Now and I will say this about, everyone should do this, but of course we all have what we need to do. I am a serial journaler. I have journaled my entire life. And when I was going, which is really amazing for myself, when I go back and I look at my transition through all of this, from before my father died to current, and I look at all of my meditations and I look at all of the messages that came through from spirit, and I look at all these things. And in 2017, and I'm really strong in core shamanism, gone through my Peruvian medicine, adapting all these things. I had a really bizarre meditation. And I journal. I wish I had it sitting here, I would show you. I draw in my journals. And when I see something, because I'm a clairvoyant, so I have so that my sight's really important to me. So I draw these. I have all kinds of images in my journals. And I had a development student talk to me about numerology, and I go, oh, I did my chart a couple of years ago. Let's pull it up and see where it's at right now because of all this Norse stuff that's coming up. And I opened the journal and I'm like, oh, this isn't the journal. But what I opened to was a page of three figures, three hooded figures standing all beside each other. And I said, I know this image. I just recently went through a class with these beings. And I'm like, I don't know what the meditation. So I was reading through and I'm like, holy shit. So in 2017, I had an angelic being or a Valkyrie come and bring me to Urger's Well, which is the base of Yggdrasil, this tree in Norse cosmology, to the three Norns. And all I did was stand in front of them. And in their message to me in 2017 was, the time will come when you return, basically. And I was like, and that moment I was like, oh my God, I'm on the right path. And it was just confirmation for me.
Yeah, the timing on like when this stuff lands is outrageous. And it's interesting because as you're talking, the concept of shamanic journeys, when my more experience is connected to regressions. And this is so wild because I did a soul regression in 2021. I didn't know anything about Nordic cosmology. And the experience as I was being guided through this, what I was finding, it turns out, and I didn't know the names for this stuff, but what I was describing to a T was Vahela. I think that's how you say it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was really crazy because afterwards, the practitioner who was leading me, she was like, do you know who Freya is? And I was like, no. And mind you, what's interesting, when Averie asked you the question about like how the acceptance of like the transitions, she knows like I'm stepping into that personally with some stuff with mindfulness and firearms and the stuff I do with law enforcement and the military, which in 2022 or 2021, whenever that was, when I was doing or when I did this regression, that was part of the initiation into my work with the military. And when I learned about Freya being the goddess of war and love and magic and all of those things, she's been like this component. And I just, again, going back to the synchronicity, that's partly why I'm working on clothing and like things connecting to her, because when you said they kind of grab you or like there's this energy.
They claim you, yes.
And I would say, with regressions or progressions, when we do these meditations and we have these experiences where we see these things or connect with these things, what would you say the different, like I know regressions can be or progressions can be a lot of different aspects, but even with shamanic journeys, like I almost feel like they kind of overlap in different ways.
Yeah, well, when you're doing shamanic journey, you're really connecting on the soul level, right? So you're seeing a couple of things, and it depends on where you go. First and foremost, have that intention. So if you're going into the journey with the intention of looking in the past and connecting to a deeper sense of self and who you are and what do you need to see that you need to embody in this life, which is, when you're talking about regression and you're talking about going back, I think that's a really important aspect. But it really can be life altering when you can connect on a soul level with yourself. Because if you're looking at yourself in a more of a holistic way, you're outside of yourself, which if we think about everything around us is kind of mirrors things back to us, right? So if we have triggers and things, it's like, well, what is that showing me? And what do I need to learn about that? Or am I just gonna be triggered and be mad and just like walk away? We have choice whether or not we want to look at it. But I think that shamanic journey, and hopefully I'm answering your question, is really powerful in that way because ultimately we're connecting on a soul level. And which part of ourselves do we want to see? What beings around us do we want to connect with so that we understand their purpose around us? I mean, all of this can be rolled up into shamanic journey because you're really connecting with the deeper sense of self and how those things collectively around you assist in that growth and expansion. and a love for yourself too.
One thing that I always found so powerful in the meditations, and I think what drew me right to this shamanic journey aspect of meditation is not only the striking visual imagery, right? Because you have such a gift for that, right? You literally clear sight. And the way that that's translated is so beautiful. So it's really easy. Right. If you're in that meditative state, I think a lot of people oftentimes struggle with the visualization bit. That can be very difficult to see a world inside of you. Um, so that being said, with this sense of very, very striking visual imagery, I found it impossible to not be immersed in this world where I was almost looking in on myself. And
Mm.
it's this really interesting thing. I shared with Mel a couple weeks ago that the symbolism is so strong, right? And that's why it can be very poetic almost, right? When we have these realizations, when we're going through these journey meditations. Um, but one thing I think like that I'll just share is you never know. I never knew going into one of the meditations or shamanic journey meditation what was going to happen. And that's this beautiful key piece. And I'll share, like, that's why at the end I always waited for Jill's explanation of some of these symbols, maybe that were coming up, or what some of these things could kind of mean. But I think what it does is we might not necessarily understand what we're seeing in ourselves, but it's that self-study aspect of you really do, right? When you come out of it, you say, well, what does that mean in me? Why was I transported to that room? Why did I see that person or that animal? And it gets us to ask these questions that really open ourselves up to ourselves. So I'll share that was just, when you ask, that's a big or was a big piece of it for me. It's not necessarily that I leave it with the understanding, but I would always leave with this question that allowed me to peel back something a little deeper.
That's awesome. Yeah, that it was really interesting starting out and just channeling without knowing how it was going to land with people. And then to watch the kind of the collective shift and the things that people would connect with and say. And to your point, how what would come forward would almost be like that. Why would that come forward? But it leaves you with those nuggets so that you can take them back into your life and you can kind of watch how they show up, because that often happens. Like you might have meditated about a bluebird sitting in a branch and you get out of your your meditation journey with me, and then you look out your window and there's the bluebird sitting on the branch. I mean, it would be all of these synchronicities, but it would show people like what you're experiencing is real. It's tangible. It's something that you take out of this space of the unseen and you bring it into your kind of 3D reality, that there's something bigger than ourselves happening, and it's not just I'm meditating for my overall well-being, which is pretty profound.
Takes it to a total different level that I think fuels purpose and mission for people, but
For sure.
also it reminds me in yoga philosophy, right? Like we're yoga teachers, we're with all of that side of the house in Vedic tradition. So they talk about ether and like the vibration. In Sanskrit, it's akasha, and you hear about the akashic records or just this like enveloping vibrational wisdom or data that all of us have access to. And through meditations or yoga nidra experiences, as we go drop deeper layer by layer into ourselves, we actually become more available to see things from a wider scope, or like the symbolism Averie was talking about that can fuel so much clarity or confirmation. It's not literally like even the experience with Freya. I mean, I, for weeks, was immersed in the Freya stuff because I was like, what does this mean about my soul? What does this mean about Freya? But what I've seen over the years is that it's more so a context that I can collaborate with when I'm making decisions of like, oh yeah, like I resonate with this part and I hope I feel like I'm not even making sense actually as I'm talking about, because
Oh, you are.
it's
Sure.
hard. Yeah, it's hard like with this really deep stuff because honestly, I don't talk like this is not my meditations of Freya, and then it's just wild that you brought that up because I was just doing that. And it's hard, I think, to explain, which is why to maybe someone who doesn't do these practices, it can feel like you sound crazy. Or what do you mean you're connecting with Freya for your mission or whatever? But I think it gives us, going back to, for some reason, the word template is coming up again. It does give us a template to see ourselves in a deeper way through that, I think can help propel our dharma and our mission here as human beings collectively.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love that. I'm just I'm sitting here thinking about your connection with Freya, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, where is that going to go? Because she's big, and she'll push to connect to um like almost a female warrior sense of self. She's really strong that way. But then there's this like really beautiful, nurturing earth connectedness with her too. I don't work with her as much. She's always there kind of on the periphery. She doesn't come much into my practice as much as Thor does. But yeah, it's a wild ride if you deep dive into it.
It's crazy because even when we first got on, I was like, Avery, I got my new, because I just got this stuff is what's informed by Freya, is my new, the mindful tactical stuff. And it's
Huh.
connected to a seraphim. Like, again, to someone, they'll see this, they'll go, oh, crosshair, oh, the logo makes sense. But it's so intentional. And between seraphim and Freya, and it's so connected to a lot of that. But it's funny because you're right about how these things almost, I don't know how to verbally, like the right words to explain, but it's almost like it helps us fine tune our uniqueness, like in our expression. And again, I'm sharing this vulnerably and openly so our listeners can hear, like, when we talk about spirit and these wild synchronicities, y'all are listening and seeing it happen for me right now through this experience. So I love that, and I'm grateful that Jill, that you shared that about your Nordic interest. But I would love for you, as we kind of transition the conversation into with regressions, and how I think, or with meditations, for example, a lot of times before you do regressions, meditation is something that does help prepare for deeper experiences like regressions, progressions, or shamanic journeys. Maybe for people who are new to this topic, what are some things you'd recommend that they get into or explore?
Yeah, so everyone goes into their practice based on what their individual kind of calling is or what they need. And I just want to back up for 1 second because you said something that was really good, and it might be important for people that are listening. And I've been teaching meditation and a course for a long time. And I did my last course in that space last year. And I said it's going to shift and change. So and I'm not doing a plug for that. But what I tell students is when they go through that, is we tend to look and compare at someone else's experience. So someone that might be hearing our conversation today might say, well, I'm not anywhere near that. Like, how do I start? What does that look like? So to kind of talk to you about your own experience. Each of us has this really beautiful, unique, energetic signature. And so what I found is that spirit will work with us knowing what our relative or relatable experiences are and say, like, for you, and I don't know, like, this is our first time meeting. And so, and I'm not trying to read, tune in or read you or anything. But if I would think like military and tactical things, I would say, okay, you might be ex-military, you might understand the use of weapons, you might try to be doing something in a mindful, helpful way, maybe for PTSD or veterans or that from that space, right? So if I am in your spiritual sphere, spirit trying to help you, I'm going to tap into those things that really connect. And even, on a deity or spiritual level, like what are those things that would be really helpful to you and to get you to the space that you need to get to. Now, this is thinking like your spiritual team outside of you. And so when someone's looking at where's the best place for me to start, back to your question, I would say look first at your relative experience and that really unique sphere of energy that you bring into something. So maybe you come from a traumatic situation and you really need peace. You really need quiet. You really need to be able to learn how to sleep. Would I tell you to go immediately in to try and figure out how to do shamanic work? No, I would probably say, see how well you can sit with binaural beats and try and do that for 5 minutes and maybe increment that over time. And feel your body, like be present in your body and feel how the energy moves in your body. And once you become more comfortable and you want to go deeper, then I would say, now let's take it a little bit longer. Maybe you go from binaural beats to just a tone, or maybe a singing bell or something like that. And then I would say, if you're struggling sitting, then maybe do some really simple guided work, like guided work that takes you through the energy of your body. Now, even people just doing work on looking at their body and the way energy moves in their body can have really transformational experiences, like going through the chakras in your body, and then maybe from there, look at, am I more adept to movement involved in my practice? So would I benefit more from maybe a yoga practice where I can move my body and still sink in deeper with that energy of self? Because then once you're good here and you can really connect here and understand the energy of who you are, then it makes sense to go and expand outwards more and bring more. Oh, Spirit's giving me a really nice vibration on this. Expand more and say, okay, well, what does my soul look like? I'm ready. I'm good with Jill. I'm good with what this looks and feels like. Now I want to reach out a little bit and I want to expand into deep guided meditation that with regards to healing. Maybe I want to look at what it looks like to do a past life regression and connect again with that intention of, what did I learn that I may be repeating, that I'm not fully integrating or healed from, that I need to be aware of my personal power. Like, was I a badass before and now for some reason I'm kind of shrinking? What fears are coming up that are sorry for swearing, holding me back from really embodying who I am? You know what I mean? So I know that's kind of a long answer, but it really depends on the person and where they're at. And it can feel so overwhelming when someone says, you should learn to meditate. I'm like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? How do I do that? How it can be overwhelming for a lot of people.
I love that you mentioned this aspect of understand what is here, right? This physical being, what is here, sink in here to go out. And we talk about that a lot. Mel has a really I love her way of explaining this is this is the avatar self. So maybe what this is we have to understand the avatar self, right? To then project into the soul self, which can be two very, very different things. And I think that's what yoga helps us do. And personally, right, I think that's why I am a yoga teacher, right? Is so that we can settle into the body to understand what is happening here, how it feels to be here, how it feels to be us, and then to be okay with taking those steps a little further out, right? Understanding
Yeah.
then the soul self.
Well, I mean, even someone that wants to do a past life regression, they want to book that session with me, or they want a shamanic healing. There are things that should be already at play with you before you take this really big leap into exploring something. And I say that because, and I'm going to use your example of this shell self or this avatar self. If we're not in right relationship with our physical selves and the energy that's in there, and this doesn't mean that you're healed and you love everything about yourself. It means that you have a really strong, keen awareness of who you are. And now you're ready to look at maybe some of those shadow aspects of self and integrate them and really allow them to be part of yourself and say, it's okay. I know this is me. and less of an identity and more of like integration. Anyway, so if I go and do a shamanic healing, for example, and there's been soul loss, which I know we haven't talked about, and some listeners may not know what that is, and you bring that piece back into the body, if we're not prepared to assimilate that, and this happens during shamanic journey too, and it happens during meditation where you'll have these pieces of yourself return. But if you're not in more of a balanced state, it won't stay. It's not, the healing isn't going to be long lasting. You might get this initial euphoric feeling, and then it's like, good feeling gone, because your vessel isn't balanced. It's not kind of honed in. So starting with really good techniques that help you identify first, who am I? What's important to me? Where do I feel loss? What do I do to reconcile that loss? And like general things. And, I often will have clients come in and do, big shamanic work with me. And the other side of that is they have a therapist. So, or a therapist is recommending them do this type of work to get deeper into what they're not seeing because they're afraid to look at it, or have memory loss, or those kinds of connected things.
That's really a good point, because it is really deep stuff that can show up. And one of the things that I kind of frame this with communities, especially with meditation and kind of walking down the stairway to these deeper practices, is that we're neural patterns, right? We're just a bunch of patterns. And if we've spent years creating patterns of disassociation or over-identifying with our thoughts, we really can't meet these experiences with the neutrality and the openness and the curiosity. Because even, different, like even my own past life regressions, and Averie knows, like this conversation, I think I'm stuttering so much because I love this conversation. I could spend hours talking about these topics because they've changed my life. But I didn't start meditation until 2014. And then I didn't start regressions and going deeper like this till 2020. So it's been a process. And I really invite people to have compassion with their own process, and that remembering that meditation and yoga practices help train the mechanical structures of this avatar, of this body, so it can hold these types of experiences. Because if I can't concentrate, and it doesn't make me wrong, bad, or good, it's just a mechanic of the brain. If I struggle to concentrate, being in a 4-hour regression it can be really tough. And so I remember the first time I went to have a past life regression, she was really big about, do you already have a meditation practice? Okay. And asking the questions like with therapists, and do I have a support system? Because, and I recommend people, if they're curious about this stuff, Dolores Cannon is one of my favorite teachers, and Dolores Cannon has a lot of books out there to kind of give you an idea of maybe some of what to expect. I'm sure all practitioners have different components, but some of the themes that can come up, right, that are really deep, or if it was a traumatic past life that comes up. So having that additional cognitive support, is definitely big for this stuff too. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Oh, for sure. And it's, your regression therapist sounds like they also did their due diligence. It helps when someone has a strong meditation background when they go in to do a past life regression session, because you're lucid when you're recalling these experiences, and your practitioner is bringing you to a deeper state of hypnosis, but you're also lucid. So it feels like a really deep dream state. I don't know how it felt for you, but typically for someone, it will feel like a really deep dream state, because we have to keep you engaged in that process and bring you in or out of certain areas that benefit you and don't create more trauma, so to speak. So you want to have a good therapist, which sounds like you did, and always make sure there's support on the other side. I mean, there have been times when someone's sitting across from me and I've had to say, we are not doing a shamanic healing. You're not ready. you can't accept what might come in. You're not prepared for it. Your body's not prepared and you're not mentally prepared. And those are hard conversations.
I think too is the remembering about timing of our life, because for me, there was events that occurred that led. Like I didn't, a lot of this stuff I find, and going back to even when you're talking about when you stepped into your mediumship or just connecting with spirit more, in our lifetime, there's these experiences that are initiations into deeper ways to connect with ourselves or opportunities to connect with ourselves. So if, this is super resonating to someone who's listening and it's, something that you're feeling called to explore, there's a lot of ways to deep dive in it. But if it's not, it's okay. Because if you would have brought this stuff to me in 2014, I'd been like, okay, we're Deepak Chopra is as far as I'm going, you guys. Chill. Like I was not I was not there yet, But I've had life experiences that have taught me otherwise, and it's just been my journey. And I think we're all unique in our journey. It's so perfect for each of us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, again, it's like that, what collective experiences have you had in this life so far? And people know, I very similar to what you said, like I look back and I have these points. And so when I'm in development with students, I say that, kind of map your life. Look at your pivot points, big moments, and you can do it with your normal life. Like, okay, well, I graduated college and then I got married and I go, yeah, those are your like life moments. I'm talking about the ones that you don't share because you sound weird. I want you to look at that first time I saw a spirit in my house, like 7, click. Okay, what did you do after that happened? And these are all like pivot points. And when you look at them on a line and you're looking at them collectively, you can say, oh, that's what they were trying to show me. But if you get all of that information in one lump sum, like with you in 2014, you're like, Deepak Chopra is as far as I'm going to go. If all that information had been downloaded to you and given to you, it's like you wouldn't have known what to do with it. Wow. So it's like you have to kind of spoon feed him. And I just say, like, spirit, and I say use it in general terms, knows you more intimately than you know yourself. And so if you can look at this kind of timeline and understand, okay, this is kind of what's happened, or this is what's happening, it gives you more of an understanding of what they're trying to tell you, where your gifts are. And we all have that inner knowing, like, is this good for me? Is this not good? Should I go here? And we use this too much, our brain, instead of, our physical bodies to resonate. But yeah, it sounds like you're definitely following your path. That's exciting. I love hearing about it.
Thank you. It's definitely, I think, the overcoming the fear. I love that, like the mind stuff, because, and Averie knows, even with this stuff that I'm shifting into, or I should say expanding into, I'm terrified. I'm so scared people are going to think I'm so weird and this and that. And I've been doing this dance for years. But like you said, I think intuition, our divine path, and then all this energetic movement and momentum, it doesn't have to be so hard. And I probably, when I get to the other side, it's like, why the hell did I wait 3 years? What was I thinking, But a lot of us stay in these circles. And this is why I love not just the work that you do, but Joy Tish, right? And astrology and like all these things that are baselines that we can kind of collaborate with to go, okay, not that we need validation, but there's not a handbook for humans. Like we just want to belong. We want to be safe. So anyways, so good.
Oh gosh. I mean, I could go on and on about how we, just looking in general, you just look at your life and you say, okay, I'm just going to take a quick like survey. Who's in my life? Who's in my sphere, right? And even outside of that sphere, like who influences me, who comes in, and what did they teach me? So I'm always looking at every interaction as someone's teaching me something. Like I might be holding space or teaching something, but I'm always being taught something. And so I think that's really helpful for me on a spiritual journey to say, okay, that person came in and they were a blip and they were gone. But boy, I had an impactful moment, and it shifted my trajectory. And I look at that little timeline and the catalyst there and say, yeah, okay, I can see where that shift came in, and why it was so helpful. Um, but a lot of people, and I do have a point to this, and I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but a lot of people will say they'll get hung up on ideas that certain people are tied to them on a soul level. We have lots of terms for this.
Yeah.
Our twin flame, our soul, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Like, we've split souls, and my soulmate, that's what I'm trying to say. And we lose ourselves in attaching to someone else. And I think it can be really destructive. And I don't know why I needed to say that, so I apologize. Going off,
Somebody needed to hear it.
somebody needs to hear it. Well, because it takes away from your experience, and you still need others around you, right? So we're emotional beings. We transition, we shift through emotional pain. We look at that pain, and sometimes we'll avoid it when the people that show up, who are truly kind of part of that soul family, are the most triggering. We're like, so when I say, look at that sphere of people that are around you, what are they teaching you? The beings that know us the most, that we incarnate with, that I have found through regression and my own personal work, are the ones that give us the most, like, oh, just let you out of my face, They're the ones that are like, but I love you the most, and I'm holding space here for you because you asked me to, and you need to learn something and shift it. And once we do, it's like, oh, thank you. And then that goes away, and then you're moving on to something else. So, talking about those pivot points, talking about people in our sphere, how they shift and changes our own energetic signature, and how it's so important, connecting through that through meditation for a deeper understanding and learning. But it extends from our meditation. It just shows us something, and then we take it into the real world, the 3D world, and say, oh, okay, I see what you mean. I see why my mom's my mom. I see why my dad's. I see why that ex-boyfriend I was so attached to for so long is, whatever.
It's so true. It is so true. And one thing that's been so powerful within my own meditation practice is the power that it often gives you to forgive, right? To forgive those instances and those individuals, and to essentially just like release it, right? Because we're able to see the value or the purpose. It might not always be beautiful. And oftentimes, right, like you said, it's those moments, it's the ones that really get you that are the hardest to do that with. But it is such a powerful thing in meditation, because again, it's just peeling back those layers, I think, of the awareness around it. So,
Oh, for sure. I recently hosted a meditation. I meditate live with people in the town I live in Green Bay, twice a month. And it's cool when you're in person, because what you channel is for those people only. And yeah, and I think to myself, I'm like, man, I want to go somewhere where I can just sit, someone channels, and I can enjoy that. Anyway, my dreams. But there was one that was really profound. And when I sat back and I looked at the people that were collectively in that space when that happened, I just took it in, like, we're never going to have the same energetic presence in this moment, in this space again. And what came through in healing was so profound. And as a teacher, I learned so much from just trusting. Because every time I sit down to this, I really have to, like, give it over and be like, okay, let's go. But when we were done and we can collectively share, which people that listen on podcasts, they don't get, right? Because they're not in a sharing, they don't know how to share their meditations except for people that don't maybe not get them, or, people that are friends or whatever. But to listen to them share and have seen the same things, gone into the same hut, stood on the beach, rode the same horse, did all the same things, and then come out with this collective, like, whoa, I did not know where that was going. I didn't think it was going to go there. I didn't realize I was going to get that kind of gift. And then have this like, wow, I'm going to need to sit with that. I don't know, it's the coolest feeling.
It's
But
amazing.
for me, it's trust. It's like, oh, thank you, Spirit. I absolutely trusted where that was going.
Yeah, it's because sometimes what comes out, you're like, I don't know if this is crazy, but like we kind of experience this with Joy Tish when we do chart readings, and I do the Akashic records, and sometimes I'm like, I'm seeing long-necked animals. Why are all the animals long-necked? I don't know, but I need to just tell you because, and it's crazy how it ends up winding into something else, but that did happen last week. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But the
I love it.
trust, and then also, I encourage people, if you're getting into this stuff, get you friends, find communities or people who you can process it with, or maybe the right therapist or the right practitioner, because it helps us digest these experiences. And I think it opens us up to a deeper awareness to our path, or just more, again, I go back full circle, meaning of the now moment and being in the now moment and feeling valued in this like wider tapestry of human experiences, because we can get lost in it. You said that a little bit ago, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
so good. Before we start to wrap up, because I know we're at the top of the hour, Avery, do you have any last questions?
No, yes, tons.
I know, right?
Uh, None that won't take us hours to dive through. So,
And because I could ask a ton of questions too, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And maybe do you want to share anything about mediumship? I mean, we can keep this episode more condensed on the meditation aspect, but
I'll share whatever. I mean, I'm Jill, so I can all the things, right?
multifaceted, yes.
Yeah, mediumship is probably the core of my practice. And I would say that it is because it allows me to um and I would say, I'll back up a little bit. Mediumship is that word itself, I think, simplifies being able to energetically connect and hear, feel, see, smell non-physical beings. And so, whatever that being is, there are people that will specialize in only speaking to angelic beings or humans or, non-human alien, and they want to, and then allowing things to come in whether it's trans channel or whether it's just you're allowing them to come into your energy and you're speaking for them or they speak through you. There's different kind of, I would say, levels of mediumship, which I've done all because, in exploration, I want to understand, well, what types of beings want to step into your body and channel through you, and why do they do that? And I love speaking to, for an easy, I love speaking to the dead. I think that talking to our loved ones in spirit brings so much healing. And I can think of many conversations with people where there's been pieces that I've personally healed from by bringing those messages from our loved ones. And yeah, it's profound work, but it also helps in doing compassionate depossession in shamanic work, which a lot of people don't talk about. It also helps with psychopomp work and compassionately helping cross souls who are stuck here for various reasons. And yeah, I think that I might have started there and I have like branched into everything, all these things, but really the core of me is a medium. And I'll talk like spirit knows. I'll talk to whomever. I'll talk to deities. I'll talk to angels. But all these beings exist. It's just in the non-physical.
Yeah. Well, our eyes are so limited too. We always say, because in yoga philosophy, they say the mind pervades the whole body. But
Mhm.
because we think it's all here, like there's so many ways we actually perceive to get data for our interpretation, but there is this limited field. And I find that people get they're either like, what? Because there's so many branches in mediumship. I actually used to work with a medical medium who
Mhm.
that was profound. I mean, there's so many arenas of this that are so beautiful, but I think a lot of people will have experience where they are connecting to beings or something. Even if someone prays, right? And connecting in, it's all energy that we're working with. And they'll be, where a thought comes as a bounce back voice and you're like, where did that come from? So I think there's a lot of people are like, don't even realize they're doing it when they're, when they are.
Well, like you're driving in your car and you just get this sense of like, stop, slow down. And you're like, what? Take your foot off the gas. And someone right in front of you just cuts. Like, if you hadn't, you would have been smucked, right? And so, yeah, in everyday world, and most people can relate to that because most of us drive or we're in busy lives, we're in our head, we're not thinking about anything. And then this is when spirit will be talking to you because you're not conscious of it. You're not thinking about it. You're not attempting to connect. I don't know. It's cool.
They say it's when you occupy like the right or the left brain, so the right brain can come online. Like driving, it's like it's kind of a monotonous task, or doing the dishes, like things that are more like we're occupied. It actually allows us to connect intuitively more, is from what I've heard. Why the car? Because I feel like Averie knows my car. I'm like, that is my pedestal. So
Well, car, shower, you'll see a lot of mediums, they'll like to hold an object or they'll like to draw or write. And it's trying to get that part of the body occupied with something. So like you said, so it's much easier to bring in that channel and bring in messages. Yeah. Oh yeah, I could do we could do a whole conversation just on mediumship, just on the way spirit connects and why they connect in a certain way and how it looks and and what someone needs to do if they're starting to get these. Oh yeah, tons I could do.
we might need
Okay.
to have you come
I
back
know. I think I'm just
on.
gonna have you back then, and then we'll just focus on that because that I'm like, I want to know.
I would love to.
Well,
Well, Jill, go
and
ahead.
I was going to say that this year the North Node is in Pisces.
Mm.
So
She's drinking.
a lot of people are connecting with 12th house energy. It's the unseen. It's the collective North Node. So go
Love
ahead,
it.
Averie.
Well,
I know we gotta
Jill,
close.
for people to learn more about you, anybody who's potentially interested in working with you, where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
Um, they can find me through my website, which is findyourkey, that's ki.org. And so I have who my teachers are and what I do and what my practice looks like, where my podcasts are. I will say that I have very sparse bookings right now. I'm very good thing. So I'm not complaining about it, but my clients will complain a lot that it's hard to book. And that's just because my schedule, people book my schedule opens and then it's like floodgates. So yeah, you might have to book in advance, but I give 100% of myself to my clients and the work that I do. And so they get very intimate experience with me. And yeah, I personally think it's worth it, but that's how they find me. And then on the socials, right?
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook and yeah. Insight Timer. I'm on Insight Timer too.
Oh, amazing. We will
Mm.
put your links in the show notes for people to be able to find you and dive into these amazing meditations that Averie was referencing and all the things.
Just thank you so much. And I'm so, so excited for all the things to come and your new journey. And it sounds amazing and wonderful. And thank you for
Yeah.
being here. Yeah, it's been
Thank
so wonderful.
you. Oh, thank you. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. I just like getting to talk about it. This conversation like this is so great and so helpful. Again, coming in and learning what people are doing and what fuels them and what drives them and what they're excited about and what spirit is showing them. I just get jazzed about it. I think it's fantastic. So I really appreciate the conversation as well.
Same, same, same. Like all of it. Yes.
Love
It's
it. We'll have to have you back because yeah, there's so much more. And it's been such a cozy hour. And again, I'm just so grateful. And thank you for just all that you have given to me over my own healing journey for the past so many years because it's been wonderful. So it's been such an honor, Jill, to have you.